I was 16 when I started working at the warehouse. Back then, it wasn't anything impressive, just a dusty supply depot at the edge of town, with concrete floors, flickering fluorescent lights, and towering stacks of cardboard boxes that always looked one bump away from collapse. My dad called it a humble beginning. I called it home. While my friends spent their weekends at parties or camping trips, I was hauling boxes, managing invoices, and answering customer calls with a practiced smile and tired eyes. Every process, every inventory system, every organizational improvement, my fingerprints were on all of it. My name is Clara Hayes, and I was the one who transformed a cluttered backroom operation into a regional logistics company. At least, I thought I was. At first, Dad noticed. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "You've got more grit than half the guys I've hired." Coming from him, that was high praise. He wasn't one for compliments. But then there was Jason, my older brother by 3 years. He had charm, a killer smile, and absolutely no sense of responsibility. He floated between colleges and careers, always finding himself, always funded by Dad, never held accountable for much. I, on the other hand, didn't get leniency. I got expectations. No praise. No excuses. By the time I turned 25, the warehouse had grown into a full-fledged supply and distribution company. We had regional contracts, an expanding workforce, and a reputation for reliability. I had modernized our inventory systems, digitized the operations, trained a full customer service team, and helped double our revenue in under 3 years. We were valued at $60 million. And yet, I was still just helping out. No title. No salary. Not a partner. Not even on payroll officially. Just the daughter who worked hard. I kept going because I believed in loyalty. Because I thought, eventually, my father would look up and realize I wasn't just helping, I was building. Then came last Friday. It was supposed to be a routine strategy meeting. Just me, Dad, and Jason in the conference room. Dad sipped his coffee and casually said, "Starting next quarter, Jason's taking over client relations and strategic growth." I blinked. "That's my department." Jason smiled like it was a done deal. "Time to pass the torch, Clara. You've been great, but, it's time to scale things up." Then came the words that gutted me. "You're kind of obsolete now." He said it like a joke, like a throwaway line, but there was no humor in his eyes. Just triumph. I turned to Dad, hoping, expecting, he'd shut it down. He didn't. He nodded. "It's for the best." That moment is seared into my memory. Jason grinning like he'd won a prize. My father looking at me like I was a piece of outdated equipment he was finally tossing out. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I stood up, collected my laptop, and walked out. But as I closed that glass door behind me, I made myself a silent promise. They think I'm walking away. They think I'll disappear quietly. They have no idea what's coming. Because I wasn't just the daughter who helped out. I was the architect. The following Monday, the city woke up like any other day. Same clouds. Same street noise. Same burnt coffee smell from the cafe on 6th and Willow. But nothing felt the same to me. I stood outside the headquarters I had helped redesign 2 years earlier, staring at the steel and glass facade I once took pride in. Inside that building were systems I had built, clients I had landed, people I had trained. And yet I was being erased. They thought I'd go quietly. I didn't walk, I marched in through those glass doors. The receptionist gave me a tight, awkward smile. She had heard, of course. Probably everyone had. The sympathetic glances. The whispers behind my back. "She's back?" I thought she quit. Didn't Jason take over? I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I walked to my office, the one no one had dared to clean out yet, and shut the door behind me. Everything was just how I had left it. Neat. Functional. Mine. The photo of Mom and me still sat on the desk. She had passed when I was 18, But her belief in me had never wavered, even when Dad's did. I powered up my computer and slid a folder from my bag onto the desk. Inside, emails, signed documents, contracts, time-stamped conversations. I had spent the weekend preparing not a tantrum, not revenge, but facts. Ironclad, legally binding, cold hard truth. I opened a secure file. One I had created years ago. One they didn't know existed. It was a scanned copy of a shareholder equity agreement, signed by my father in 2015, back when the business was just starting to grow. At the time, there wasn't enough money to pay me. So he had promised me something better, 22% equity in the company, in exchange for labor and development. Silent shares, he called them. Just until we're stable, he said. One day you'll get the credit. He never expected I'd hold onto it. And that wasn't all. In my mother's will, she had left me her 18% share quietly, in a clause she never mentioned to anyone, not even Dad. She had believed in my future when no one else did. 40%. I held 40% of the company now. More than Jason. More than Dad. I didn't want war. But I wasn't going to be silent anymore. At 10 a.m., I sent an official request for an emergency board meeting. At 10:10 a.m., Dad and Jason barged into my office. "What the hell are you doing?" Dad demanded, his voice hard. Jason leaned against the wall, arms folded smugly. "You walked out. That means you gave up your position. End of story." I rotated my monitor so they could see the agreement glowing on the screen. Dad squinted. Jason leaned in. "What's that?" "That," I said calmly, "is the document you signed giving me 22% equity. The rest came from Mom." Dad's face paled. Jason's smirk vanished. "I've called a shareholder vote," I continued. "We're reconvening at 10:30. You might want to get ready." At exactly 10:28 a.m., I walked into the boardroom of Hayes Logistics, the company I had helped build from nothing but a pile of invoices and a dream. Today, it was full, 11 board members, half of whom had known me since I was a teenager stacking boxes in the back room. The others had joined during our expansion, brought in for their insight and strategy. None of them had ever seen me like this. At the head of the table, where my father had always presided, I placed my documents, connected my tablet to the presentation screen, and waited. A few murmurs filled the air. Some looked confused. Others were tense, clearly briefed by my father already. Then the door opened again. Dad walked in, rigid and unsmiling. Jason followed, casual as always, trying too hard to look unbothered. He took his seat, arms sprawled like he owned the place. Dad didn't even look at me. I stood, keeping my tone professional. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. This is a formal shareholder and executive meeting, called under the rights outlined in our 2019 revised shareholder agreement. As of this morning, I hold 40% of the company's equity, 22% as granted by contract in 2015, and an additional 18% through inheritance." Elaine Wu, one of our longest-serving board members, adjusted her glasses. "That's a substantial stake, Clara. But why now? Why call this meeting?" I took a breath and tapped my tablet. The screen behind me lit up with graphs, revenue growth, client retention, cost savings. Each chart told the same story. Every meaningful uptick in the company's performance happened after I stepped into leadership behind the scenes. "I've worked here for almost a decade," I said, "not as a figurehead, but as the operator. The strategist. The person responsible for every scalable improvement this company has implemented in the last 5 years. And last week, without warning, I was pushed aside for someone who's never held a stable role here for more than a month at a time." I didn't have to name Jason. Everyone in the room knew. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's be clear, this isn't about disrespecting your contribution, Clara. It's about growth. Jason represents a newer, bolder vision for the future. He connects with a different generation of clients." I turned to him. "He can't even connect with a calendar. Let's not pretend this is about strategy. It's about preference. It's about family bias. Jason leaned forward, voice coated in smugness. You walked out, Clara. That's not what a leader does. I smiled thinly. I walked out of a farce. Not this company. The boardroom quieted. Even the air conditioning felt like it had slowed down. I am calling for a formal vote, I continued, projecting the motion on the screen. One item, to reevaluate executive leadership and appoint a new CEO of Hayes Logistics. Elaine raised a hand, skeptical. That's a bold move, Clara. And if the board votes no? I kept my eyes on her. Then I will exercise my right to sell my stake, publicly or to a competitor. I have already had informal interest. Gasps. Not loud. But sharp. Jason's expression shifted from amused to alarmed. You'd destroy the company just because you didn't get your way? No, I said firmly. I'm trying to save it. From cronyism. From laziness. From mediocrity. From leadership that's handed out like a family heirloom instead of earned through sweat and sacrifice. My voice was calm. Even. But the fire beneath it couldn't be missed. Elaine looked around the room. We vote now? Yes, I said. And we did. One by one, the votes were cast electronically, anonymous but immediate. As the final vote appeared on the screen, I felt a wave of stillness roll through me. Clara Hayes, 6. James Hayes, 2. Abstain, 3. A simple majority. Enough. My father didn't speak. He just stood slowly, stared at the results like he couldn't believe what he saw, and walked out. No speech. No fight. Just silence. Jason stayed seated for a moment, frozen, then pushed back his chair and muttered, "This is a mistake." I met his eyes. "You once told me I was worthless. Now I'm your boss." He opened his mouth, closed it, and left. The board members remained seated, still stunned. I took a deep breath. Let's get to work. The following day, the energy at the company shifted in a way I could feel in my bones. Some people looked at me like I had pulled off a coup. Others, like I had just opened the floodgates. And maybe I had. Because for the first time in this company's history, someone had been promoted for what they did, not who they were related to. At 9 a.m., I held an all-hands meeting in the company's conference hall. Not an email. Not a memo. A face-to-face with the people I had grown alongside, most of whom had only known me as the person who fixed problems quietly from the background. I stood in front of the room and said what I had been waiting years to say. My name is Clara Hayes. I'm your new CEO. And I'm not here because of legacy. I'm here because I earned it. The room was silent. Then came the first clap, from the floor manager, Dave, who'd been with us since the early warehouse days. Then another. And another. Until the room filled with applause. Not thunderous. But real. Respect. Not for my name. But for what I had built. That afternoon, I found a note slipped under my office door. You think this is over? It's not. It was Jason's handwriting. I recognized the childish, aggressive scrawl immediately. I folded it once, twice, and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Let him rage. Let him scheme. What he didn't understand was that I didn't win this vote because I was clever. I won it because I showed up, day after day, year after year, while he coasted. Because I had plans. I had data. I had vision. And now? I had the title to match. By Tuesday morning, it was clear, word had spread. Not just that I was now the CEO of Hayes Logistics, but that I had taken the title from my own father and brother in what some were calling a hostile succession. I knew the whispers would come. I just didn't expect them to sting quite so much. I walked through the open plan office like I always had, early, quiet, focused. But this time, heads didn't nod. Conversations didn't pause, they stopped. Cold. Like I was radioactive. Too hot to touch. People I had worked side by side with for years suddenly looked unsure, like they didn't know who I really was. But I knew who I was. And more importantly, I knew what I had to do. That morning, I reviewed the department's status reports, cleared backlogged contract approvals, and answered every client email flagged as high priority. I didn't need to assert dominance. I needed to do the job. Better than anyone expected. Better than anyone had ever seen. Still, just before lunch, a message appeared on my phone from Linda, our PR head. "Hey. You may want to come by. There's a rumor going around." I met her in her office 20 minutes later. She looked pale. "He's talking to people," she said. "Jason. Telling department heads that you plan to sell the company. That this whole power play is just about cashing out." My stomach tightened. "And they're listening?" She nodded. "Some are. He's framing it as a panic move, saying you're unpredictable, unstable. That you forced the board's hand." I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, then looked her in the eye. "Schedule a company-wide meeting for Friday. I want everyone there." She hesitated. "That might make it worse." "No," I said. "It's going to make it clear." That Friday morning, I stood in the company's largest conference room, normally reserved for client events or investor briefings. But today, it was packed wall to wall with every single employee from every single department. Some looked angry. Others curious. Most looked uncertain. "Perfect? Thank you all for coming," I began, standing without a microphone, just my voice and the screen behind me. "I know there's been a lot of talk lately. Rumors. Assumptions. Half-truths." I looked at them, really looked. Faces I had seen for years, who had smiled at me in break rooms, walked beside me during late nights. People who had seen my car parked out front before the sun rose and after it set. I want to set the record straight. No, I am not selling Hayes Logistics. No, I am not replacing anyone without cause. And no, I am not here for revenge. The room was still. This company is not a family heirloom to be passed from father to son. It's a business, a living thing, built on work, sacrifice, and commitment. Many of you have done that work. So have I. I tapped the screen behind me. A presentation lit up. Hayes Logistics, the next 10 years. Slide after slide showed projections, expansions, employee investment programs. A profit-sharing structure. An internal mentorship initiative. Flexible work policies. By the time I was finished, the air had shifted. People were leaning forward. Nodding. "I'm not here to rule by bloodline," I finished. "I'm here to lead with vision. And if anyone doesn't believe I've earned that right, my door is open." There was a pause. Then a slow, scattered clap. Then a louder one. Then the room burst into applause. Not thunderous. But real. That afternoon, I received another note, slipped under my door, again. Same handwriting. "You think you've won. You haven't. I'll be back. Jason." I didn't bother filing it away this time. I just tore it up. He didn't understand. I wasn't playing to win against him. I was building something he couldn't touch. Because while he was scheming behind closed doors, I was opening every single one I could find. By Monday, Jason was gone. He had cleared out his desk sometime over the weekend, leaving behind only an empty coffee mug and a chair that still leaned too far back. No message. No goodbye. Just silence. HR confirmed the resignation. And no, he hadn't left forwarding information. I didn't smile. I didn't sigh. I just added a sticky note to his office door. Vacant. Apply within. But the real surprise came Friday morning. My father was waiting for me in the lobby. Not in a suit. Not in command. Just my dad. He looked smaller. Like someone had finally pulled the mask off the legend and found only a man. "I'm not here to fight," he said quietly. "Then what are you here for?" He hesitated. "To talk." We sat in the conference room, the same one where I had taken my seat at the head of the table and watched his power dissolve. He looked around, eyes soft with something close to nostalgia. "You made your point," he said. "No," I replied. "I made a decision." He sighed. I never thought you'd take it this far. You never thought I could. He nodded. Slowly. You were always the one who had it. The fire. The focus. But I thought. What? That the world would follow a Hayes son before a Hayes daughter. There it was. Truth, finally. I didn't get angry. I just said, you were wrong. I see that now. We sat in silence. Then he added, I'm stepping down. Fully. No consulting. No advisory role. I raised an eyebrow. I'll keep a small stake. The rest I'm transferring to you. I didn't say thank you. I just looked him in the eye and said, you should have done that years ago. I know. But for once, he wasn't defensive. Just tired. And maybe, just maybe, proud. When he left, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. It had been 6 months since I officially took the reins at Hayes Logistics. 6 months since I walked into the boardroom and demanded the space I had earned. Since I stood up not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been told to stay in their place. Since then, something remarkable happened. We hit new revenue records. Landed 2 regional distribution contracts we'd been chasing for years. Expanded to 3 new cities. Employee satisfaction was the highest it had ever been, turnover at an all-time low. And that was just the surface. We launched the profit-sharing program I'd promised in my first company-wide meeting. For the first time, warehouse employees saw bonuses land in their accounts. A few cried. Others took photos of their pay stubs and sent them to family. One woman told me she could finally afford to enroll in night classes. That was the part I held closest. Not the numbers or the headlines. The people. The change. The impact. Still, not everyone adapted. A few department heads who had risen under my father's old school system left quietly. Some tried to take their teams with them. Most didn't. Turns out, loyalty built through fear has a short shelf life. I replaced those who left with fresh thinkers, people with heart and vision, some of whom had been overlooked for years. It was the best decision I ever made. We didn't become perfect, but we became real. And in this business, real beats perfect every time. The Friday before our annual strategy summit, I found myself walking the operations floor late in the afternoon. Old habit. It used to be where I felt most at home, in the rhythm of the place, the hum of forklifts, the chatter over headsets, the faint scent of grease and concrete dust. One of the newer interns was giving a tour to a group of college students. She was nervous, but earnest, showing them the packing lines and digital inventory system I helped design 6 years ago. Then she gestured toward the second floor. That's where our executive offices are, she said. The corner one with the blue glass? That's Ms. Clara Hayes. She's the reason I want to be in leadership one day. I stopped walking. It wasn't meant for me. She didn't even know I was there. But I stood in place, heart swelling, eyes burning with something deeper than pride. Because that's legacy. Not your name on a building. Not a line in a business journal. It's someone saying, I want to lead because she showed me how. A few weeks later, I got a message I never expected. Jason. He had left without a word, but now he sent an email. Short, stiff, but civil. I've been hearing about the changes. The numbers. The employee responses. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. You were always the one who kept this place standing. I was too proud to admit it. I won't ask to come back. I wouldn't blame you if I'm never welcomed in again. But I do want you to know, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. I didn't reply. Not yet. Some apologies don't need answers. They need time. My father, surprisingly, kept his word. He stayed retired. When I saw him, it was mostly at small family dinners or company events he attended quietly, like a guest, not a ruler. He watched me from a distance, occasionally offering a nod or an encouraging word. But the biggest shift? He started listening. Once, after a Q&A with new hires, he came up to me as everyone was filing out. You were right, he said. They follow you. I smiled. They follow the truth. He didn't argue. Spring rolled in, and with it came the 1-year mark since the takeover. Our annual shareholders meeting was held at a new venue, a sleek, sunlit event space downtown. Clean lines. Open floor plan. Everything about it felt forward-moving. I stood on stage in a tailored slate gray blazer, no podium, no barrier. Just me and the people who had built this company. Exactly 1 year ago, I was told I was no longer useful. That my time had passed. That I should step aside. There was a collective inhale across the room. And yet, here we are. I walked slowly across the stage. This year, we grew revenue by 36%. We onboarded 1,200 new clients. We expanded into new markets, launched new programs, and increased employee retention by 29%. A pause. But numbers aren't everything. I looked out across the room. They said leadership had to look a certain way. That tradition and family name were more important than skill or heart. They were wrong. Quiet murmurs of agreement. I didn't come here to inherit anything. I came here to build something. And I intend to keep building, not just profits, but trust. Not just policies, but people. I looked into the front row where my father sat, hands folded. Legacy isn't about who gets the credit. It's about who carries the weight. Applause. Not wild. Not performative. But real. Steady. Unshakable. Like the company we had become. That evening, I walked alone through the now quiet office. My heels clicked softly against the polished floor. Desks were cleared for the weekend. Plants watered. Break room clean. I passed the office Jason used to occupy. It was now the mentorship hub, where new hires met with department mentors once a month. The door was left open. Light spilled onto the floor. I paused. Then turned toward the executive wing. My office door bore a small gold plaque now. Clara Hayes, Chief Executive Officer. I opened the door, stepped inside. On the far wall hung a framed photo, my mother and me on my first day working here at 16. I was in overalls. She was holding a clipboard. She had believed in me before anyone else. On the desk sat another frame, added just last week, this one with a photo of our operations team at our recent anniversary barbecue. We were all laughing, arms slung around shoulders, paper plates in hand. Real. Messy. Human. Exactly how I like it. I sat down, opened my laptop. Then I leaned back and looked out at the skyline. They called me the assistant. The daughter. The filler. The help. And now? They called me leader.